Right, following on from our last video, we're going to talk about lead generation. How do you actually generate leads for your Airbnb management business or Airbnb rent-to-rent business? So how do you do this in a way that is effective, takes time, and that kind of stuff? So a lot of ways that people do it. Most people, when they do lead gen, are going to be calling agents, landlords, and that's pretty much it. They're going to be doing it through Gumtree, OpenRent, Rightmove, Zoopla, that kind of stuff, and very basic. One thing that you need to learn is that there's different types of outreach to begin with. So you've got warm outreach, cold outreach, then you've got paid ads, so paid, we'll call it paid traffic, and then content. Most of you, when you're starting your first business, you're not going to be willing or really wanting to invest in paid traffic. You haven't put any content out there, so you haven't got any sort of social media building platform followings, that kind of stuff. So the two main ways that you're going to do it is via warm outreach and cold outreach. So let's dive more into cold outreach first. So what is cold outreach and how do you apply this to your Airbnb business? Cold outreach is specifically the idea or the concept of reaching out to people who don't actually know you, hence why it's cold. They don't know who you are. This can be very, very tough because one of the main struggles and one of the main things that you'll find is that people don't trust you. People like to do business, and I say this a lot, people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when you're doing cold outreach, they don't have any of these things. So they don't know you, they don't like you, and they don't necessarily trust you. How can you basically, let's say you're doing a very, very standard process of reaching out to agents and then landlords via all your kind of direct to landlord sites. How do you actually create a successful cold outreach mechanism? There's kind of two things, or three things that come off of that actually. First, you need to build your lists. So what people do is they go on Rightmove, they go on Zoopla, they go on OpenRent, whatever, and then they just start calling. No, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to get you anywhere consistently. What you need to do is build a list of people that you want to target. If your first target group is estate agents, this would be one list on your Excel sheet. Then your next group will be landlords, and this is your landlord list, and the landlords that you're going to target are on these lists to begin with. Then you have to think a bit more creatively. A lot of people then, what they start doing is they go, right, well, I've done estate agents, I've done landlords. Anyone who's doing a rent-to-rent business is going to be contacting estate agents and landlords. That's the easiest way to get deals, right? Or the way that most people are taught to get deals. But the problem is then you're not being very creative, and the pool of people that you're competing against is very similar in the sense that everyone who is trying to get rent-to-rent deals, Airbnb deals, etc., is all doing the same thing, and you're not an established business, and therefore you're all competing for the scraps, and it's really hard to get yeses, and that's how people get discouraged. So with your lists, you can be more creative in terms of how you actually get these, right? It could be via the planning portal. This is essentially a portal that will show you all the planning applications in England, in the UK, all that kind of stuff, or in your local council, which will tell you who has applied for planning permission, what kind of developments they're doing, etc. How you have to think of this as well, the next one I'm going to talk to you about, is you have an estate agent. When an estate agent does a deal with you, they are basically a referral. All they're doing is referring you to a landlord. They have the landlords, they have the customers that you want. You are trying to basically go through them to get the customers, and you pass them a referral fee, an admin fee, or whatever. What you have to think is, who else, what other companies have the customers that I want, but I'm not going to gatekeep them as hard as estate agents. Estate agents are very protective over their landlords, but other companies will pass you landlords and discuss with you. So building firms or planning consultants, plumbers. Basically, this is just a couple to show you, but these are essentially all businesses and people that have touch points with landlords and have a contact book full of landlords. So you can work with them and get access to that contact book. So if you're reaching out to these people on the list, the reason that it's going to be more successful is because the people that you're having discussions with are not familiar with the concept of Airbnb or rent-to-rent, etc. And they're not going to have the stigma that comes with it, and they're also going to be less attached, because if you can offer them a referral fee or something like that, they're actually going to want to work with you because you're essentially making them money. So this is how you do it. And what I want to touch on here is there's two ways that you can do your cold outreach. If you really want to be successful, there's volume, of which you should be doing at least 100 outreaches a day. If you are not doing 100 outreaches a day and you are following some script that someone has given you or a very standard framework, you are going to really struggle because you're not pushing enough volume out there to basically do more and do better than most people you're competing with. If you do 10 outreaches a day, but there's also 100 other people who are doing 20 outreaches a day, who do you think is going to have the success? It's very simple, really. So if you are not doing that kind of volume and you are following a sales script that someone's giving you, that kind of stuff, and you're only stuck because of you and you're not doing enough work to put in, actually get to where you want to be. So this is the approach I took to begin with. I just took volume. I did as many phone calls as I could every single day. I didn't even track it as well, but that's the one thing you could do. So that's another thing that's in this whole kind of base is tracking. You have to track, and that's super, super important. If you don't have the time, skill, whatever, to do 100 outreaches a day, do you know what you then do? You have to personalize. I don't think this is spelled correctly. I'm sorry. But you have to be personalized. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm recording my laptop screen on Loom. If you go onto people's properties, if you go onto Airbnb, if you say something about someone's property and you give value and give a personalized message to begin with, your response rates are going to be a lot higher. So people will appreciate it. Even if you're selling a service that they don't want, they will appreciate the fact that you've gone out your way to give them some value. If you say, I really like your property, we think we could do something on Airbnb, just saying like some of the furniture, this and this could be changed, I'll put a feature wall here and this kind of stuff, and this is what the kind of rate that we would give you. Is that something you could be interesting, we could work with on a management basis? You know, personalizing your offer to that person is they may not want it, but they'll at least be appreciative because you've actually given them some value. No one likes, when you see your phone go off and you see it's a random number, no one likes getting a cold call. So if you are cold calling them and then following a really basic script and giving no personalization, giving no value, of course these people are going to be really kind of annoyed and not want to speak to you. So if you offer that personalized aspect, whether it's value about their property, value about the area, some contacts that you can give them, however you can offer value from, and one of the things I always like to say to people is use your previous past experience, however you can offer some value in that and give them a personalized response and just say like, you know, I appreciate this cool call, this maybe not what you want to hear, just give a little bit of humanity, a human tone element to it. So you've got to do volume or you've got to do personalization. Now, if we go on to warm outreach is incredibly similar to cold outreach. However, warm outreach is the process of reaching out to people who know you. You don't have to know them, you don't have to know who they are, but they know you. And that's super, super important. So they know who you are, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, you went to school with them, you used to work with them, however it is. What you need to understand is these are people who know you. So you create your list of, you basically go from A to Z of every single person you can think of or know, and then you reach out to them. And the first message is a very simple, hey, how are you doing? Seen that you're doing X, Y, Z, just wanted to check in. And that's a good opener. You're not trying to sell your services or whatever. Continue the conversation, and eventually you just want to throw in your offer and just say like, hey, look, I'm doing Airbnb management. Do you happen to know anyone who would be interested in this and this kind of stuff? So you're not asking them directly for their property or their service if you know they have this, but you are essentially saying, hey, do you know anyone who would be interested in this? And maybe they'll refer you to someone. I know someone who got a contract to do maintenance on 60 properties because they just did this method through Facebook and someone put them in touch with a landlord who had 60 properties. And with warm outreach, the response and the way that you work has to be even more personalized and tailored. So sending them a video of you talking about your business and your property, one of the things I always recommend people to do is create a Loom videos or a one-pager document on your business that you can send to estate agents, landlords, warm outreach clients, whatever. This is how you start to build an outreach framework. And then the most important thing of all that kind of ties in to both of these is tracking. You need to track how many outreach you're doing, what's your response rate, all these kind of things. You need to track everything to make sure that your system is very clear and you know where you're falling down. Is it your response rate is the problem? Is your close rate the problem? Is your rejection? What is it? What is that actually in your system that is bottlenecking you from seeing that success? And most likely for most of you, it's probably just that you're not doing enough volume. And that's how you do it. And that's how you start to build a system over time. So hopefully that has helped you give a bit of an idea of how you build an outreach system, an outreach framework to actually start getting some deals.